Okay, there we go. So back to where I'll just start from the top. And again, I apologize for it taking us this long. But anyway, the instant case is a consolidation of three appeals. Those who don't see this, right there, the consolidation of three appeals to the Court of Appeals challenging the constitutionality of Minnesota's administrative child support process. That's what this case was about. So that's what the case that the court was listening to at the time. That's it. They wanted to know uh, where the questions were. The You'll find out that the district court sent this case up to the Minnesota Supreme Court. Go here. This appeal presents the issue whether the administrative process, and I'm going to change the color on this. And here's what it wants to know. It presents the issue of whether the administrative process violates the separation of powers doctrine by impinging upon the original jurisdiction of the district court. Right there. You see that, people? The issue, the administrative process violated the separation of powers doctrine by where it says impinging upon the original jurisdiction of the district court. You see that clearly, and this is the case that came out of Minnesota that so many people seem to swear by, says that child support is unconstitutional. I just said, listen, let me just try to help people out. I'm not a guru. I think I read pretty well. And despite some people thinking I may have a little bit of a condescending tone, it's not my intention. But when you do this stuff a lot, and by the way, I did spend some time working with a law firm, you kind of learn things from several perspectives. But the biggest thing people tell you is to learn to find out what was the issue before the court. So the issue before the Court of Appeals is whether the Constitution, the administrative process, and this is back in 1996, so I think the case came out in 99, as well as I think there was a stay in this case as well. We'll get back to reading it. I'm in Florida, didn't really care very much about Minnesota, but since everybody kept trying to swear to me that child support was unconstitutional, I just felt the need to address it and let everybody know that if child support was unconstitutional, there would be no more child support cases, at least not in Minnesota or anywhere where the Supreme Court of state ruled it unconstitutional. And of course, if the United States Supreme Court ruled child support unconstitutional, there would be no more child support cases in the United States because they would be deemed unconstitutional. Now, question here was whether it violated by impinging upon the original jurisdiction of the district court. I would suggest everybody go read this statute of Minnesota, and by creating a tribunal which is not inferior to the district court. So that's another question. So it's actually addressing more than one issue. Don't get on me about my colors. I'm just trying to separate it. That's another question that it addressed that day. And one more question that it addressed is, and by permitting child support officers to engage in the practice of law. So you see the three. Furthermore, the Court of Appeal, the administrative process unconstitutional. So there you go. Clear as day. I'll put it in red. And if anybody wants a copy of this when we're finished, just let me know and I'll send it to you. So the appeals ruled the administrative process unconstitutional, and they relied on the separation of powers doctrine. You see that, people? It's clear they relied on the separation of powers doctrine. And what did the Supreme Court do? They affirmed the Court of Appeals, meaning they agreed with, and hold, and this is very important. You asked what was the question before the court and what was the holding. The court held the administrative process is unconstitutional because it violates the separation of powers. Now, that's the opinion of the court. We can get into how the court came to their conclusion by simply going in and say, okay, what was the court talking about? And by the way, I think I need to highlight this affirming part for anybody who may be confused. We affirm. You see that? That means that the Supreme Court of Minnesota agreed with the Court of Appeals of Minnesota. And by the way, if you have any questions, I believe you can type it into the YouTube link, as well as if you're on my whatever this thing is, this Restream. And I'm actually using a different computer because I don't know what's going on with my main PC. I probably need to just shut it down and let it come back up. But nonetheless, once you finish doing that, you go into the court and you go into the rest of it, and you get down to where it gets into analysis and what have you. Well, let's go back up here and do a little bit